Howdy everyone, David here, and this is a tutorial on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition on how to create an encounter for your party. So, first off, a lot of people in the channel always ask me, whenever I'm doing my live games, how to calculate an encounter. And there's a lot of different theories out there on using challenge rating, adding up the total monsters, putting them against your party, adding up your party, and vice versa. And it's actually explained in two areas. Now that the Dungeon Master's Guide is out, it's on page 82 of the DMG, or page 56 of the free Dungeon Master's Guide download. That has both of your Dungeon Master's Guide's options and creatures and monsters. So let's take a look at creating an encounter. So first off, it's not that complicated. It's actually pretty simple. So first off, what I want to show you is basically the way that D&D 5e groups are engineered for groups of 3 to 5 players. And if you have a group of, say, 5 players, then if they're all level 2, putting them against this ogre here, which is a challenge rating of 2, would be fine. Basically one party versus one creature. Now when you start having a lesser amount of people or a higher amount of people, or if you start throwing more monsters into the mix, that's when the formula comes into play. So unless you're going to do a lot of one-on-one fights, well, basically meaning one party versus one creature, then yeah, this would be for you. But I don't see that happening. So let's go ahead and let's start looking at the formula. So first off, if you're a dungeon master, you want to think to yourself, okay, what do I want to do? So the first step that I do is figure out what kind of difficulty that I want to have for my players during this encounter. So there's, in D&D 5e, there are 4 different levels of difficulty for an encounter. Basically, it starts with easy, meaning the adventurers should quickly and decisively overcome the encounter. Medium difficulty is the encounter presents some difficulty, but in the end the adventurers should emerge victorious. The hard difficulty is a hard encounter is tough, and it could potentially go very badly for the adventurers with a few of those unlucky die rolls or bad circumstances. And then lastly, the difficulty of deadly. I don't really recommend this unless you're a really ruthless DM, or maybe the end of a campaign fight. The encounter is potentially lethal for one or more of your player characters. So those are the difficulty ranges for an encounter. And once you determine that, which is always the first step that I do, I usually always try to do medium and hard. Then you want to go to the actual encounter building itself. Now, the first thing you want to do is take your total party. Say if you have, we'll stay with guidelines like in Horde of the Dragon Queen or Rise of Tiamat, 5 players. So we'll say that for this tutorial, we'll say that our players' levels are all level 2. So all we're going to do is basically come down here. You'll see that it's valued at 50 points per easy for an easy encounter, and you'll see here, at the top, their level. This is a really nice matrix. So levels 1 to 20, easy, medium, hard, deadly, like we had just talked about. So if you have 5 easies. If you want to make an easy encounter for 5 players, you'll have a budget of 250. 5 players for medium will be 500. 5 level 2 players for a hard encounter would be a total of 750, and lastly for deadly would be 1,000. So once you get that this calculated out, really simple to do. That's the next thing that I do. That's pretty much step 2, and that's what is explained also as you're reading either the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 82 or page 56 of the free Dungeon Master's Guide from the Wizards website. So the next thing you want to do is figure out what types of monsters you want to use and how many you want to use, because that is a that's a huge thing that has to do with the formulaic way to create an encounter. So, like I said, we're going to look at this next table here, which is the encounter XP multipliers. Like we had mentioned with the ogre down here, it had the challenge rating of 2, and that would be great for a party of 3 to 5 players. As you can see here, the XP multiplier would be nothing. So if you wanted to do a pair, which if you wanted to throw, let's say we'll throw this goblin into the mix. It has a challenge rating of 1/4, 50 EXP value, compared to the ogre has a 450 EXP value. So let's say we're going to pit our group against this pair of monsters here, which would have a EXP multiplier of 1.5. So we're going to come down here to the first example encounter to build this. Now, an ogre and goblin, like I said, with a pair of monsters, 2 monsters, you're going to take that EXP value and multiply it times 1.5. So the ogre has 450, so times 1.5, it would be 675. The goblin, being 50 EXP, would be raised to 75. So when you take those 2 creatures, 675 and add 75, you're going to have a total of 750. So you're going to see that for 5 players here, level 2, your party budget between easy, medium, hard, and deadly, that number is going to fall to hard. Alright, that's manageable. You can have a goblin and an ogre versus a party of 5 level 2 players. Alright, that's going to be a hard encounter. That's great. I'm all for that. As the neighbors are shooting fireworks off in the background. They've been doing that all day. I like that. So we'll go ahead and do the next example encounter, which we'll say we'll scrap the ogre, okay? Let's go with a lot more creatures. Let's make it a little bit more interesting and a lot more movement going on in Theater of Mind, or if you're using a virtual tabletop battle grid, or if you're using tiles at home. So let's say you want to use 5 goblins. Let's come back up here to the Encounter XP Multiplier, and you're going to see the next group is 3 to 6 monsters. And whenever you use these monsters in a group of 3 to 6, you're going to use that times 2 multiplier. So now you're going to say, okay, we've got 5 goblins, and it's 50 EXP per goblin times 2 multiplier. Now these goblins are worth 100 EXP apiece because you have a group between 3 and 6. So here you've got your 5 goblins with the times 2 multiplier, which is a total of 100 times 5, because we're doing 5 goblins. There's 500. So you're going to say, okay, that's a medium encounter. So let's go ahead and stay within the same group range here, and let's just add 1 more to take it to 6. Alright, so when you do that, it'll take it to 600. You'll have 6 goblins, and that's going to be in between medium and hard. Now, the one thing that you want to notice is nimble escape on the goblin. This can actually be pretty, it could be pretty frustrating for the party, and it could actually also open up a lot of opportunity attacks for the goblins, especially if you strategically, play your goblins to try to feed off of attacks of opportunity. And sometimes the players will chase and also take attacks, but sometimes they'll try to work their way around. So even though it's still a medium to hard encounter with the 600 budget with 6 goblins, that nimble escape is going to make the encounter a little bit tougher, especially if you do. Say if you do 3 of the goblins with scimitar attacks and 3 of them with short bows. So you can spread everyone out, and you can actually cause a great deal of havoc with these 6 goblins for a 5-person party, which would actually be really fun, not only for you, but for the party as well. Alright, so let's say we want to try a larger group. Let's see what 7 goblins does, because remember, when we stayed with 6, we stayed with the times 2 multiplier. Now when you throw that 7th one in, now you're not in a group anymore, it's called a gang. And the gang is between 7 and 10 monsters, and they have a multiplier of 2.5. So You have the goblins, 7 goblins, 2.5 multiplier. Now, instead of being worth 100 apiece, they're worth 125 apiece because of the 2.5 value. So, when you have 7 of these bad boys, it takes the total to 875. So you can see now your encounter for 7 goblins has now swung the pendulum from between medium to hard to now it's between hard and deadly. And especially when you throw other, race features and class features in, like nimble escape, or maybe the ogre with, we'll say the bugbear has brute. It doubles weapon damage, but that's another thing you need to take into consideration are the really, really, really tough class and race features. So there you go. We've given you several examples on to do a solo encounter with a 3 to 5 person group, a pair of monsters, a group of 5, also with 6, and then 7. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about is, how all of the groups are basically engineered, for Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat anyway, like I had mentioned earlier, for groups of 3 to 5 players. So here's a little optional thing here that's also within the Dungeon Master's Guide and the free Dungeon Master's Guide PDF download that you can get. It talks about how if you have smaller groups or larger groups. So if you have fewer than 3 players, then you would actually raise the multiplier up 1. And when you would raise the multiplier up 1, say you were going to do this, the pair, the ogre and goblin, then you would basically, do times 2 instead of 1.5 because you're going to raise the multiplier up. Because when you raise the multiplier up, it's going to take that budget that you have for the 2 players and it's going to make these monsters worth more. So it's going to balance it out because you have a smaller party. And the same works for larger groups. Say if you're going to go with 6 or more people, then what you would do is you would lower the modifier. So take for instance our 7 person. We're going with the gang. So instead of being worth 2.5, if you have 6 or more people in your group, then they would be worth 2. So you could probably squeak in a couple more goblins with the 2.0 multiplier instead of 2.5. So these are some really good challenge rating rules. I really enjoy the way that they've created the encounters. But like I said, there's a lot of other variables as well. If there's any kind of terrain, special types of traps, you also have to, like I said, mention before, especially with like the bugbear, it has like the brute skill where it does double damage instead of single weapon damage, nimble escape. Then there's like pack tactics that give kobold advantage on all attacks. So you really want to watch what you're doing and take into consideration, even though you're going to run say 6 or 7 kobolds or goblins, then just kind of watch their skills, because things could get really nasty really quick, especially if you have 7 goblins all with advantage. I mean, that could really get nasty really fast. So anyways, I hope this helped out everyone. This has been requested several times now, and I thought I would take the time and give you this tutorial on how to create encounters for D&D 5e. I think it's a great system, and I hope it's here for many years to come. Thank you guys for watching the video. I will have the link down below for the free download PDF from the Wizards site. Also feel free to leave a comment, and I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.